Projection. We all do it to some extent. I'm certainly guilty of it. I'm sure at some stage you, the viewer, have projected. And in the world at large, it seems to be on an exponential increase, especially in the last couple of years. So let's have a deeper dive look into what psychological projection is. Projection occurs when an individual notices an uncomfortable feeling, a personal flaw, or insecurity. So it's an uncomfortable feeling, personal flaw, or insecurity, does not know how to process it, and subsequently directs or passes it on to someone else. This could be through criticism, shaming, pointing the finger, or even verbal or physical abuse. A big caveat before we continue: not everything that gets directed your way is projection. So if someone's identified a flaw or is criticizing you, it's not always projection. And the way that you can tell is to ask yourself, if what was just said to me informs me or interests me, then it's likely just an observation. However, if what was just said affects me or even creates a reaction within me, then it is likely projection. Why do people project? Well, projection is a form of emotional displacement. So taking the emotions that one feels and placing it somewhere else, and that's usually onto somebody else, which makes it much easier for the person or the projector to live with themselves, and in their mind, their emotional state isn't their problem anymore, it's everybody else's problem. As a result of externalizing their emotions and perceiving them in others, they continue to suffer terribly in life and often create false self-images to protect their ego and to protect their sense of self. This could be a self-image such as the victim, like I've been through a lot and this happened to me and you need to feel sorry for me. Or it could be the good or righteous person. That's not right and that person should be doing it this way, and if I was in that position of power I'd be doing this. These are all forms of a false self-image, and these people really aren't that, even though they portray that they are. Sadly, for somebody that projects regularly, they're not even aware that they're consciously doing it, because they're spending so much time and energy preserving their self-image, preserving their ego. They don't even realize the damage and possible karmic consequences that they're actually going to eventually have to deal with by projecting onto people much of the time. For example, let's say that you know somebody that has self-esteem issues relating to their physical appearance. You may notice that they feel threatened by other people's bodies, the shape of them, the size of them, what they do with them in terms of exercise regimes, the food that they eat, etc. Rather than confronting their personal insecurities about how they look and how their bodies are, they project onto others. They cast it away onto someone else by criticism, belittling, insults. This could sound like, they're not that good looking, or yeah, they think they're a 9 but they're really just a 6, or oh my god, have you seen what she's wearing? Statements like these preserve the person's self-image, as all of this pent-up energy within them, their own anxiety, they kind of release it through the projection and onto somebody else. So it really builds up inside of them, and instead of dealing with that, sitting with it, doing some breathing, meditation, talking to a therapist, etc., they instead take all that energy that builds up and just throw it out onto other people. People that project regularly as a coping mechanism believe they are superior to others and project their own inadequacies, flaws, and even fantasies onto others. For example, let's say that you had a friend that just, for whatever reason, went from job to job. They just couldn't stay at a form of employment for very long. It could be a couple of weeks, couple of months, but something comes up, the manager, the boss, they don't like it anymore, whatever the case is. So they're in and out of work on a regular basis. Then something happens to them. Life presents something to them that really does require money. It requires them to buckle down for a little while. So instead of taking some sort of basic job of some description, they instead spend their time and energy complaining to you or the people around them about how unfair for example, the minimum wage is, or this person at the workplace did this to me and I don't like that, or why doesn't someone just leave me a whole bunch of money so I don't even have to participate in the workforce? So this is an example of projection where your friend is unwilling to face reality, and instead of just knuckling down, searching for jobs, accepting something basic for the time being, they continue to project, they continue to have all of these fantasies that they entertain, all of these unrealistic expectations, and unfortunately that ends up affecting possibly you and the people around them. They become a burden, in other words. One last point before I go on to some solutions. The more we reject or criticize something in somebody else, the more we perpetuate our own wounding, because that criticism, that projection is actually stemming from some sort of wound that happened to us. Now, something awful may have happened to these people, there's no doubt about that, but it is their responsibility to address that trauma, to address what happened, and to deal with it on a personal level, no matter how long that takes. Because by bypassing that own self-healing and projecting onto others, it's just going to allow that wound or that trauma to fester. And even just the word fester is awful. Like if you think about a wound that's just got all this green and yellow pus and it's just festering out, and you're like, oh, I should do something about that, but you don't. You think it'll just heal on its own. I don't have to do anything. I can just continue doing what I'm doing. It's just not the case. You have to deal with those existing personal traumas and wounds that for whatever reason have occurred in life. If you feel you may be regularly projecting, this can reveal to you where you may be carrying a wound or an unresolved trauma or an aspect of yourself that you've suppressed. So let's look at two very basic solutions if you feel that you may have been projecting or started to project upon somebody. Solution one is, if you notice that you are projecting onto somebody, simply become conscious of it, apologize, and seek some sort of restitution with that person. Maybe the best way would be just to say, hey, I realize I was just projecting onto you. I'm sorry about that. This is why I was doing it. Solution number two is that if you notice yourself being triggered by a similar issue, you'll need to attempt to consciously befriend that particular part of yourself that's crying out for help. And here's 3 questions that you could ask. Why am I so resistant to accepting this discomfort? Does the other person deserve this projection? And finally, am I okay to accept the negative karma that I'm going to generate by projecting and criticizing somebody else? So hopefully those solutions help. Thank you very much for watching through to the end of the video. I'll keep coming with these episodes on mental health. It's something I'm really passionate about. So stay tuned for more episodes on mental health. Until I see you again, I ask that you keep well. See you in the next episode.